My husband thought his uncle's funeral was the perfect time to publicly replace me with his therapist. He didn't expect me to bring my own eulogy. 5 years of their lies, 5 years of his theft. He had no idea I found the recordings, the bank accounts, or the USB drive that held his entire secret life. The air inside the funeral home was thick and artificially cold, heavy with the scent of lilies and old furniture polish. I walked in, my black dress feeling too thin, my heart already aching for Uncle David. He was Marcus's uncle, but he had been more of a father to me than my own. We were in Austin. The city was humid and hot outside, but in here, everything was hushed and chilled. I scanned the room for Marcus. We hadn't driven over together. He'd said he needed to prepare his thoughts, and left hours ago. I spotted him in the very first row, right in front of the casket, the immediate family row. A small, tight knot of relief started to form in my chest. I just wanted to sit next to him, to hold his hand and grieve the one man in his family who had always, unfailingly, been on my side. I took a step forward, and that's when I saw her. It wasn't one of his cousins. It wasn't his mother. Alice, who was seated on the other side of him, sitting shoulder to shoulder with my husband, her hand clasped tightly in his, was Dr. Evelyn Reed, our marriage counselor. The blood in my veins turned to ice water. I stopped dead in the aisle. The organist was playing something soft and mournful, but all I could hear was a high-pitched ringing in my ears. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Dr. Reed, with her calm, professional demeanor, her sleek blonde bob, and her notepad full of our deepest secrets, was sitting in the family pew, holding my husband's hand. Then Marcus looked up. He saw me. His eyes, which I'd expected to be red from crying, were clear and cold. He didn't look sad. He looked annoyed. He unlaced his fingers from Evelyn's. I saw the movement, precise and practiced, and stood up. He walked the few steps to where I was frozen in the aisle, his expensive suit immaculate, his face a mask of strained patience. The entire front row turned to watch. His mother, Alice, his cousins, Sarah and Mark, everyone. "Ilara," he whispered, his voice low and urgent, not a shred of grief in it. "What are you doing? This row is for family." I just stared at him, my mouth dry. "Marcus, what is she doing here?" I nodded toward the therapist, who was now looking straight ahead, as if she couldn't see the scene she was at the very center of. Marcus sighed, a sound of pure exasperation. "Evelyn is here supporting me, emotionally. You know how hard this is for me." He glanced back at the front row, then back at me, his eyes flicking to the empty rows behind us. "Look, you're making people uncomfortable. Can you please just sit in the back? We'll talk later." Emotionally supporting him. The words hit me like a slap. The humiliation was a physical thing, a hot wave that washed over my body and then receded, leaving me cold and shaking. He hadn't just asked me to move. He had publicly demoted me. He had taken my seat, our seat, and given it to the one person who was supposed to be helping us save our marriage. I couldn't speak. I looked at his mother, Alice. She was watching, her face pinched, and she quickly looked away, offering me no help, no sign of confusion. She just accepted it. She accepted the therapist in the family row. I felt the eyes of every cousin, every distant relative, every one of David's friends, all burning into my back. I was the wife, being turned away from the front row. "Ilara," Marcus hissed, his fingers digging into my elbow. "Please, don't make this about you." I flinched and pulled my arm away from him. Without another word, I turned. My legs felt like they were moving through concrete. Each step I took, away from the front row, away from my husband, felt like a mile. I walked past the rows of familiar faces, all now pointedly looking away, and sank into the last pew, in the darkest corner of the room. The wood was hard and cold beneath my hands. The service began. The pastor started talking about David's life, his kindness, his laugh, and I had to sit there, 30 feet away, and watch her do my job. I watched as Evelyn, our therapist, leaned her head toward Marcus, whispering in his ear. I watched her hand creep back into his. When Marcus finally managed to produce a few tears during his brother's eulogy, it was Evelyn's perfectly manicured hand that reached up to stroke his back, to offer him a tissue from her purse. She was comforting him. She was the picture of the grieving, supportive partner, and I was the stranger in the back. The shock was so profound, so complete, that it bypassed grief and went straight to something else, a rage. It started low in my stomach, a cold, hard knot that tightened with every comforting touch she gave him, every shared look of grief that passed between them. This wasn't support. This wasn't therapy. This was a performance. This was a coup. This was a replacement. And they had chosen Uncle David's funeral as their stage. I didn't stay for the sad little sandwiches and weak coffee. The moment the service ended, I slipped out the side door before Marcus, or her, could see me. I walked to my car, my heels sinking into the soft, rain-soaked grass of the cemetery lawn, and drove straight home. Home. Our high-rise apartment in downtown Austin, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the entire city. The apartment I had put the down payment on. The apartment my bonuses paid the mortgage for. I walked in, and the silence was deafening, the view mocking me. I dropped my keys on the marble counter, emotionally supporting me. The phrase played over and over in my head, a vicious loop. It was absurd. It was grotesque. He said it so easily, as if he were announcing he'd hired a professional organizer. Evelyn is here supporting me, emotionally. I ripped off my black dress, letting it fall to the floor in a heap. I was shaking, not with grief, but with a vibrating, toxic energy. I grabbed my phone and dialed. It rang once before she picked up. "Maya, it's me. Ilara, honey, I thought you were at the... Oh, God, how was it? How's Marcus holding up?" Maya's voice was warm, professional, the way only a shark of a divorce lawyer who is also your best friend can be. "He's... fine." I sank onto the cold leather sofa. "Maya, he brought someone." What like a date to his uncle's funeral? "He brought our marriage counselor." Silence. For a full 3 seconds, I heard nothing but the hum of the air conditioner. "He brought Dr. Reed," I clarified, my voice hollow. "And he sat her in the front row." "With the family." He held her hand, and when I tried to sit with him, he told me to move to the back. The words tumbled out, stark and ugly. "He told me," I continued, my voice gaining a hard edge, "that she was emotionally supporting him and that I was making people uncomfortable." Maya's response was not one of comfort. It was pure, unadulterated legal rage. "Ilara, listen to me. A therapist does not hold a patient's hand at a funeral. A therapist does not sit in the family row. They are not friends. They are sleeping together. 100%. He is sleeping with your therapist." The words I had been too afraid to form in my own mind hit me, and instead of crumbling, I felt a terrible, clarifying click, as if a locked door in my brain had just been kicked open. "He wouldn't," I whispered, but it was a weak protest. "He is. And she's not just unethical, she's a predator. This is a lawsuit. Ilara, this is a license-revoking offense. God, the audacity." After I hung up, my hands were steady. The shock was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. I went to my laptop and opened my browser. I went to Dr. Evelyn Reed's secure patient portal. We all had accounts Marcus, me, and our joint couple profile. I typed in my username and password, the one I had used just last week to confirm our next now ridiculous appointment. Invalid login credentials. I tried again, carefully. Invalid login credentials. My blood ran cold. She had locked me out. sometime between our last session and this funeral. Dr. Reed had actively, deliberately revoked my access to my own therapy records, but I bet Marcus's login still worked. I was staring at the login error when I heard his key in the door. It was hours later, almost dark. He walked in, not like a grieving nephew, but like a man coming home from a long day at the office. He loosened his tie, his movements slow, and he smelled wrong. It wasn't his scent, or my scent. It was perfume. Not the faint scent of lilies from the funeral, but a heavy, expensive, sandalwood and vanilla perfume. Evelyn's perfume. I'd smelled it in her office. She must have been in his car, or he'd been at her place. He saw me on the couch, laptop open. His face hardened instantly. The defensive walls went up. "What are you doing sitting in the dark, Alara?" he asked, his voice sharp. "Where were you, Marcus? Where was I?" He gave a short, bitter laugh. "I was at my uncle's wake, the one you abandoned. Everyone was asking where you went. My mother is horrified. You embarrassed me. You embarrassed me. You told me to sit in the back. Marcus. You put our therapist, in my seat." He threw his suit jacket onto a chair. This was it. The gaslight, firing on all cylinders. "Are you really doing this tonight? Are you really making my uncle's death about you?" He snapped, his voice rising. "I needed her today. She's the only one who understands the pressure I'm under. You haven't been supportive in months. You overreacted at the funeral. You made everyone uncomfortable, and you proved my point. You're unstable." Unstable. The word hung in the air, the same word he had used to describe me in our sessions with Dr. Reed. His cruelty was a confirmation. The way he looked at me, with pure contempt instead of grief, told me everything. Maya was right. The funeral, the hand-holding, the perfume, the locked portal, it was all real. He wasn't just grieving, he was cheating. And they were using my own therapy, my own instability, as their cover story. He sighed, trying a different tactic. The fake, weary husband. "Look, I'm exhausted. I can't deal with your paranoia right now. I'm going to take a shower." He walked to the bedroom, and I just sat there in the dark, watching his retreating back. The man I married was gone. In his place was a stranger, a liar, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was done crying. I was going to find out everything. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. Marcus was snoring beside me, oblivious, the scent of Evelyn's perfume still clinging to him. I felt nothing but a cold, hard resolve. I sent an email to my team at Synapse Dynamics, the tech logistics firm where I was a senior project manager. I used the bereavement excuse. Taking a personal day to process the family loss. I wrote. The irony was bitter. The loss I was processing wasn't Uncle David. It was my entire marriage. Marcus left early. To handle estate matters, he said, his voice clipped and self-important. The moment the door clicked shut, I went to work. His personal laptop was on his desk in our home office. He'd become ridiculously protective of it over the last year, a red flag I had dismissed as work stress. He had a complex password for his work machine, but for his personal stuff, Marcus was lazy. He was a creature of habit. I thought back. His first dog, the one he had as a kid. Sparky. I typed in SPARKY77. The desktop bloomed to life. My breath hitched. That was it. The man was building a fortress of lies, and the key was the name of his childhood golden retriever. I felt a surge of contempt. I started clicking, my project management skills kicking in. This wasn't a marriage anymore, it was an investigation. I checked his browser history, his emails. Nothing obvious. He was smart enough to clear the basics, but he was also arrogant. I went to his main drive. I knew his filing systems. He had folders for taxes, work, golf. And then I saw it. A folder hidden deep in his documents directory. It wasn't just hidden, The permissions were masked, but he was logged in as the administrator. I wasn't. He was. The folder was named Personal Projects. My heart was pounding a low, sick rhythm. I clicked it. It wasn't just messages. It was audio files. Dozens of them. Each one was labeled with a date. ER session, June 10. ER session, June 17. ER session, June 24. ER. Evelyn Reed. He had been recording them. He had been secretly recording his individual therapy sessions. My first thought was, why blackmail? I grabbed my best noise-canceling headphones and plugged them in. I clicked on the most recent file, dated just 3 days before the funeral. At first, it was just what I expected. Evelyn's calm, therapeutic voice. And that frustration is valid. Marcus, you feel trapped in a narrative you didn't create. Then Marcus's voice. It's not just frustration, Ev. She's suffocating. I mean, the way she scrutinizes every receipt, the constant questions about where I am, it's exhausting. I feel like I can't breathe. Then Evelyn laughed. It wasn't a therapeutic chuckle. It was a genuine, familiar laugh. Well, you won't have to breathe that stale air for much longer. Baby. Baby. The world tilted. I hit pause. My hand was shaking so hard I could barely control the mouse. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I pressed play. I listened for the next 2 hours. I listened to them mock me. They made fun of the time I cried in a joint session, the time I'd brought up my concerns about our finances. Did you see her face when I suggested she was projecting her control issues onto you? Evelyn's voice dripped with smugness. She almost bought it. You were brilliant, Marcus said, his voice thick with an admiration he hadn't used with me in years. Absolutely brilliant. She thinks she's the problem. They weren't just talking about his career. They were planning a vacation to Belize for September. They discussed the strategy for the next few months, how Evelyn would slowly introduce the idea of a trial separation in our joint sessions, framing it as a way for me to find my own strength, while Marcus would play the part of the long-suffering husband. My stomach roiled. I felt physically ill. This wasn't just an affair. This was a conspiracy. I kept digging. There was a link in a pinned note file, a shared Dropbox folder. The password was, I kid you not, Belize 2025. I opened it. The folder was titled Notes on E. Not Evelyn, Ilara. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't just his recordings. It was her files. Dr. Evelyn Reed, my trusted therapist, had uploaded her private, confidential session notes about me and shared them with my husband. I clicked on the first PDF. It was a clinical summary of a session I'd had with her alone 2 weeks ago, one where I'd broken down, terrified our marriage was failing, terrified I was somehow responsible. I read her clinical assessment of me, patient presence as emotionally unstable, bordering on paranoid. Displays classic signs of anxiety-driven suspicion, likely stemming from her own insecurities. Her fixation on Marcus's schedule and finances is a significant barrier to his personal growth and the couple's progress. Recommend Marcus establish stronger boundaries to protect his mental health from patients' volatility. She had taken my most private fears, my confessions, and twisted them into a weapon to be used against me. She was methodically, clinically building a case that I was crazy. This was so much worse than an affair. This was a 5-year-long violation. They hadn't just betrayed me. They had been actively, systematically plotting my psychological and financial destruction. And they were using my own words, my own pain, to do it. The sick feeling in my stomach didn't go away. It solidified into something hard and sharp. The shock was gone, replaced by the ice-cold focus I usually reserved for multi-million-dollar logistics projects. They hadn't just played me. They thought I was stupid. They thought I was just an emotionally unstable wife. They forgot I'm the one who managed our entire complex financial portfolio. I didn't stop at the Dropbox. I opened a new browser tab and logged into our joint bank account. This was my territory. Marcus found spreadsheets boring. I lived in them. I immediately ran a custom report on all outgoing transfers for the past 5 years. At first, everything looked normal: mortgage, utilities, the lease on his Audi, joint investments. But then I saw it. A recurring monthly payment. Not a large one. Just under $5,000, always on the 28th of the month. It was just small enough to fly under the radar of an automatic fraud alert, but just large enough to be significant. The recipient, Innovate Horizons LLC. I stared at the name. Innovate Horizons. I'd heard that name before. Years ago. Marcus, I'd said. Back when we were still happy, or I thought we were. This Innovate Horizons startup. Are you sure it's a good investment? He had been so convincing. It's my passion project. Honey, a small logistics consulting firm. It's my shot at building something for us. That passion project supposedly went bankrupt 3 years ago. He had made a big show of it, moping around the apartment for a month, lamenting his failure. I had comforted him. I had told him it didn't matter, that my income at Synapse Dynamics was more than enough for both of us. He had lied. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I ran a public records search on Innovate Horizons LLC. The company was not defunct. It was active. The sole officer listed on the incorporation documents, Marcus. The address on file wasn't an office building. It was a private P.O. box at a mail center 5 miles from our apartment. He had been paying himself for 5 years. He'd been siphoning money from our joint account, an account primarily funded by my salary, and transferring it, month after month, into his private, supposedly failed company. I did a quick, conservative calculation in my head. We were talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. The rage was so cold it almost burned. I went back to his laptop. He was still logged into his personal email. I found his separate credit card statements. The ones he'd always insisted were just for business expenses that he got reimbursed for. The statements told a different story. They told the story of a man who was not failing. Lemaire. Dinners at Uchi and Barley Swine. $400, $500. Table for 2. Rooms at the Hotel St. Cecilia. Jewelry from a boutique I'd never heard of. I pulled up my own calendar, my own meticulously kept records. I looked at the dates of his business trips. I have to go to a networking seminar in Chicago, he'd said in April. This tech conference in Miami is mandatory. He'd insisted in July. I opened Evelyn Reed's professional website, the one I'd visited when I first hired her. Her blog, which I'd once found soothing, was still active. Her most recent post from April, taking a much-needed personal wellness retreat in the Windy City. Back in 2 weeks? A post from July. So excited to be speaking at a small psychiatric wellness panel in Miami. I cross-referenced the dates. His seminar in Chicago perfectly matched her wellness retreat. His mandatory Miami conference was the exact same week as her wellness panel. The hotel charges on his credit card weren't for the conference-approved Marriott. They were for the Faena, a luxury hotel miles away. They hadn't just been cheating. They'd been doing it on my dime. It was all there. The entire, sordid, 5-year plan. But I needed the final piece. I knew how they thought. They were arrogant. They were sloppy. I didn't just check his inbox. I checked his drafts folder. And there it was, an email. Addressed to Evelyn Reed, PhD Edgemail, com. Subject the final phase. It wasn't a love letter. It was a business plan. He'd written it 3 days ago, the day of his last session with her, the day they recorded themselves mocking me. Ev, it began. It's almost time. We just have to hold the line for a little longer. Ilara's stock options from Synapse vest in 3 months. The payout is going to be massive, at least $2 million, maybe more. My blood stopped. He knew my vesting schedule. Once that money hits her account, we give it 1 week to settle. Then I file. Your documentation will be key. We'll use your notes emotionally unstable, paranoid, volatile to argue she's mentally unfit. With her instability proven, we can argue that I'm the stable party. the one who managed the trauma of her behavior, will claim she's incapable of managing her own finances, let alone half of my assets. By the time my lawyer is done with her, she'll be lucky to keep her job, and we'll get the lion's share in the settlement. We're almost there. Just stick to the plan." I stared at the words on the screen. He wasn't just going to leave me. He wasn't just going to take my money. He was going to use my own therapy, my own vulnerability, to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could steal everything I had ever worked for. This wasn't a divorce. This was a heist. I didn't cry. Tears were a luxury, a vulnerability I could no longer afford. The rage I felt was so pure and so total that it had burned away all the sadness. They thought I was unstable. They had no idea what I was capable of. I closed the laptop. I copied the personal projects folder and the notes on Dropbox contents onto a tiny, encrypted USB drive I kept for my most sensitive work files. I deleted the browser history. I logged out of the bank. I sat on the sofa and practiced breathing, forcing my pulse to slow. By the time I heard his key in the door, I was an actress. Marcus came home, and I was ready. He found me in the kitchen, making tea, the picture of quiet contrition. He looked at me, wary, expecting another fight. "Marcus," I said, my voice soft, just a little shaky. I didn't look him in the eye. I owe you an apology." He stopped, his briefcase in hand. "What?" "Today," I said, twisting a dish rag in my hands. "At the funeral, I was horrible. I was so wrapped up in my own grief for David that I made it about me. You were right." I finally looked up, letting just enough shame show in my eyes. "It was selfish. You needed support, and I attacked you. I'm sorry." I watched him process this. His ego, so massive and so fragile, inflated in real time. He was winning. "Well," he said, clearing his throat, putting his briefcase down. "I appreciate that, Alara. It was a difficult day for everyone." "I know," I said, pressing my advantage. "And you're right. I need to trust your process. Trust Dr. Reed. If she's helping you, then I need to accept that. I want us to be okay." He walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. It took every ounce of my self-control not to flinch and rip his arm off. His touch felt like a spider. "We will be, Alara," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "We will be. Just let me handle this. Let Evelyn help me help us." I knew in that moment he was texting her. It worked. She's caved. She apologized. I could picture Evelyn's smug smile. They thought I was broken. They thought I was a defeated, hysterical woman. Good. That was exactly what I wanted. The next morning, I called in sick to Synapse. "A migraine," I said. "The stress from the funeral." At 10 a.m., I was not in a dark room with a cold compress. I was in a glass and steel office on the 30th floor, sitting across from Julian Kincaid. Kincaid wasn't the kind of lawyer you hired for an amicable split. You hired him to annihilate. He was sharp, expensive, and he hated liars. "Mrs. Davis," he said, steepling his fingers. "Your friend Maya said it was urgent. What can I do for you?" I didn't cry. I didn't talk about my feelings. I reached into my bag and took out the USB drive. "I'm not here for emotional support, Mr. Kincaid. I'm here to build a case." I took a breath and laid it out like a project timeline. "My husband, Marcus, is having an affair with our marriage counselor, Dr. Evelyn Reed. They have been conspiring to have me declared mentally unstable so they can steal my assets upon divorce. They are specifically waiting for a $2 million stock option to vest in 3 months. Kincaid's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "I have evidence," I said. I slid my laptop over, the USB plugged in. "First, the audio. My husband secretly recorded his private sessions. You'll hear them planning a vacation to Belize and mocking my paranoia." I played a 30-second clip. Kincaid listened, his jaw tightening. "Second, The notes on Dr. Reed has been sharing my private, individual therapy notes with my husband via a shared Dropbox in clear violation of HIPAA and all ethical standards. Here they are. As you can see, she's diagnosed me as volatile and emotionally unstable. I showed him the Dropbox. He read a page, his face turning grim. Third, the financials. He's been siphoning money from our joint account for 5 years into a shell LLC he claimed was bankrupt. I have the statements. He's also been funding his and Dr. Reed's vacations on a private credit card. I have cross-referenced the dates of his business trips with her wellness retreats. Here is the spreadsheet. I brought up the Excel file, color-coded. And finally, I said, the plan. I opened the draft email. This is his email to her, outlining the entire strategy to declare me incompetent and take the $2 million payout. Julian Kincaid leaned back. He was quiet for a full minute. He looked shocked, and it was clear he did not shock easily. Mrs. Davis, he said, his voice low. In 20 years of practicing law in this state, I have never seen such a malignant, flagrant breach of fiduciary duty and basic human decency. He stood up and walked to the window. This isn't a divorce. This is a criminal conspiracy. The financial fraud is one thing. But Dr. Reed, this is a civil suit for malpractice, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. And it's a formal complaint to the Texas Medical Board. We won't just get her license. We will burn it. Good, I said, my voice flat. But I want more than her license. He turned back to me. What do you want? Ilara. He's been stealing from me for 5 years. He's been gaslighting me. They conspired to destroy my reputation and my finances. I don't want half. I want everything he took. I want my money. I want my apartment. And I want him left with absolutely nothing. I want to take it all back. A slow, wolfish grin spread across Kincaid's face. I can do that. He buzzed his assistant. Clear my afternoon, and get me the paperwork to open a new, inaccessible, irrevocable trust, effective immediately. He looked at me. The first thing we do is protect that $2 million. My performance had to be flawless. I went back to work at Synapse Dynamics, acting the part of the subdued, grieving by proxy wife. I was quiet. I was compliant. I let Marcus take long, private therapy calls in his office, his voice low and soothing. I knew he was just talking to Evelyn. I knew they were laughing. The first test of my new role came 4 days after the funeral. My phone rang, and the caller ID showed Alice, Marcus's mother. I let it ring twice, took a deep breath, and pitched my voice low and fragile before answering. Hello, Alice. Ilara, dear. Her voice was stiff, uncertain. I was just calling to see how you were. You left the service so quickly on Monday. The opening. I just couldn't. Alice, I said, letting a tremor enter my voice. I was so... Well, I just didn't feel right. Not after... Yes, she said quickly, the sound of a woman who hates public awkwardness. It was all very confusing. Marcus is under a terrible amount of strain. Losing David has just wrecked him. She was already making excuses for him, just as I'd expected. It was time to aim the weapon. I know he is, I whispered, as if I were afraid of being overheard. That's why I'm so worried. I don't know what to do. What do you mean, dear? It's this Dr. Reed. I said her name like I was confused, not accusatory. Marcus insists she's helping him, but at the funeral, Alice, she was the one who told me the row was just for family. She was holding his hand, and when I looked at Marcus, he just told me to move. He said I was making a scene. I let that sit in the air. The truth. But weaponized. She told you to move. Alice's voice went from strained to sharp. The insult was no longer just from her son. It was from this stranger. She keeps telling me in our sessions that Marcus is exceptionally fragile right now. I lied, weaving their own narrative against them. She says that my expectations are a barrier to his healing. I'm just trying to support my husband, Alice, but it feels like she is trying to push me out. I don't understand it. I thought she was supposed to be helping us. I'd made myself the victim, not of Marcus, but of the therapist's influence. I was the confused, loving wife. Evelyn was the interloper. Well, Alice said, her voice now dangerously cold. I did find her presence highly unconventional. It was not her place. The seed was planted. Alice would never believe her son was a monster, but she would absolutely believe he was being manipulated by an ambitious, unethical woman. Oh, please don't say anything, I said, faking panic. Please, Alice. It will just make Marcus angry. He'll say I'm being paranoid again. I'll just keep trying. I'll trust his process. I see, she said. I hung up, knowing I had just secured my first unwitting ally. The real opportunity came a week later. Marcus walked in the door, not with his usual strained silence, but with an air of smug satisfaction. Good news, he announced, pulling a bottle of wine from the rack. Mother has decided we need a proper memorial for Uncle David, not that depressing funeral. We're holding a memorial dinner, 2 weeks from Saturday. She's booked the private room at Trulux. A private dinner, a captive audience. It was perfect. I put down my glass of water and walked over to him, my face a mask of careful consideration. Marcus, that's a wonderful idea. He looked at me, surprised. You think so? I thought you'd... Well, no, I said, placing a hesitant hand on his arm. I made sure to look up at him, my eyes wide. I've been doing a lot of thinking, since I spoke to your mother. I feel so ashamed of how I acted at the funeral. I embarrassed everyone. I embarrassed you. His eyes lit up. He was eating this up. This was his unstable wife, finally seeing the truth. I want to make it right, I said, my voice wavering just enough. At the dinner, I was wondering if I could say a few words. He visibly tensed. Say what, Ilara? Just to honor David. He was always so kind to me. I conjured a single calculated tear. And to apologize, publicly, to the whole family, for my behavior, to let them know that I'm supporting you, 100%, that I'm trusting your therapy. The smile that broke across his face was slow and triumphant. I could see him calculating. His volatile wife, offering to stand up in front of his entire family and publicly declare herself the problem. It was the ultimate validation. It confirmed their entire narrative. Ilara, he said, his voice smooth and condescending, covering my hand with his. I think that is a brave and wonderful idea. I think it would mean the world to Mother. That night, they took the bait. I sat on the couch with my laptop, struggling with my speech. What's wrong? Marcus asked, sitting beside me, the reek of his self-satisfaction filling the room. I don't know how to say it. I don't want to sound, you know. Here, he said, a patronizing smile on his face. Let me help. He pulled out his phone. I watched, pretending to look at my screen, as he typed a text. A few seconds later, he received a reply. Evelyn, of course. They were going to collaborate on my public execution. Why don't you start with how? Grief can be confusing, he dictated, clearly reading from his screen. And how you've come to realize that your own emotional reactions weren't healthy. Oh, I said, typing slowly. That's really good, Marcus. Not healthy. And then, he continued, a small smirk on his lips as another text came through. You should definitely mention that you fully embrace the therapeutic process I'm on, that you're committed to my healing. It shows you're a team player. Fully embrace the therapeutic process, I repeated, typing every word, saving the document. Marcus, this is perfect. Thank you. This is exactly what I wanted to say. I know, he said, patting my leg. It's going to be a very healing night. For everyone. He thought I was writing my surrender. He had no idea I was drafting my declaration of war. I had one last piece of evidence to gather. I needed to hear it from her own mouth. I called Dr. Reed's office. I pitched my voice down, making it sound thick with tears. Hi, this is Alara Davis, I whispered. I know I'm not on the schedule, but I need to see Dr. Reed. It's an emergency. I think I'm having a breakdown. Her receptionist, who had always been so kind, was suddenly efficient and cold. Dr. Reed is very busy, but she has a cancellation for tomorrow at 10. Yes, thank you. I breathed, as if she were offering me a lifeline. I'll be there. I walked into that office, the one where I had spilled my guts for a year, and the beige walls and calming abstract art felt like the set of a horror movie. She knew I was coming. She was sitting there, her laptop open, her face a perfect mask of professional concern. Alara, she said, her voice smooth as river rock. I'm glad you came in. I was very worried about you after the funeral. You were, I asked, sitting on the edge of the sofa, not touching the back. Before I sat, I had pulled out my phone. I just need to turn this off. Marcus gets so mad if it rings. As I fumbled with it, I hit record on the voice memo app and placed its screen down on the table between us, close enough to pick up everything. I'm the one who should be sorry, I said, letting my hands tremble. Dr. Reed, Evelyn, I'm so sorry for how I acted at the funeral. I was so confused, and I acted paranoid. I see that now. Marcus was right. She nodded slowly, a small, tight smile playing on her lips. She thought she was reeling me back in, controlling the narrative. Grief manifests in complex ways. Alara, it's not uncommon to project our anxieties onto the people trying to help us. She was praising my breakthrough. I know, I said, the words tasting like ash. But I need your help. I'm losing him. I can feel it. He's pulling away, and I don't know what to do to keep him. I let my voice crack. What do I do? Dr. Reed. How do I save my marriage? I'll do anything. I watched her. This was the moment. She was my therapist. She held a professional and ethical duty to me, her patient. She leaned forward, her expression softening into a mask of deep, therapeutic pity. It was the most reptilian thing I had ever seen. Alara, she said, her voice a toxic lullaby. You can't keep a person who doesn't want to be kept. You've been focusing so much on what you need, what you demand from him. But I love him, I pleaded. Of course you do. But sometimes, real love is about letting go. It's about giving the other person the space to find their own path, without the burden of our expectations. The burden of my expectations. The demands I made, like fidelity, like not being robbed blind. So I should. Just do nothing. Let him find his path, away from me. I'm saying you should focus on yourself, she countered, her words a perfect, untraceable poison. Don't be so demanding of his time and his energy. He's in a fragile place. The more you pull, the more he will move away. Let him breathe. Let him come to you. If he chooses to, she was telling me to let go. She was telling me, in perfect therapeutic doublespeak, to get out of her way. The recording was capturing every single license-revoking word. I had what I needed, but I wanted the final confirmation. I stood up, wiping at non-existent tears. You're right. You're right. I, I'm just so worried about this dinner. Evelyn frowned, feigning ignorance. What dinner? Oh, I said, as if it had slipped out. Marcus's mother is throwing a memorial dinner for David, at Truluck's, in 2 weeks. I'm supposed to give a speech. Her posture changed. She was no longer just a therapist. She was alert. A speech. What about, to apologize, I said, looking at my shoes. To the family. For, the funeral. I'm going to tell them I was wrong, that I've been unhealthy, that I'm supporting Marcus and his process. To trust him. I looked up, just for a second, and I saw it. It wasn't a smile. It was a flash of pure, unadulterated triumph in her eyes. The look of a predator who has just watched the prey walk right into the cage and lock the door itself. She was victorious. My public surrender would be the final nail in my coffin, the perfect end to her story. I knew, in that instant. She wouldn't miss that dinner for the world. She would be sitting right next to Marcus, watching me humiliate myself. Well, Elara, she said, standing up, the professional mask firmly back in place. That sounds like a very healthy, very brave step to take. I walked out of her office, my phone in my hand, my heart beating like a war drum. The trap was set, and she was walking right into it. It happened 3 days before the memorial dinner. I was at my desk at Synapse, closing out a major logistics chain update, when the email alert popped up in the corner of my screen. The subject line was simple: HR notification, RSU vesting complete. This was it, the payout. The $2 million Marcus was waiting for, the money he and Evelyn had built their entire plan around. I clicked the link to my brokerage account. The number staring back at me was $1,974,000. It was all there, converted from shares to cash, sitting in the settlement fund. According to Marcus's email, their plan was to wait 1 week to settle. They were counting on my ignorance. They were counting on me being the emotionally unstable wife who didn't check her own accounts. They thought that money was just going to sit there, ripe for the picking, while they finalized their legal trap. I looked at my watch. 10:15 a.m. I took a deep breath. I opened the wire transfer tab. I pulled the slip of paper Julian Kincaid had given me from my locked desk drawer. The account number for the new irrevocable trust. A trust he couldn't find, couldn't access, and couldn't touch, even with the best lawyer in Texas. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Account number, routing number, wire amount $1,974,000. I clicked Confirm Transfer. A warning popped up. This is a large transaction. Are you sure? I clicked Yes. Within 1 hour, not 1 week, the entire foundation of their 5-year plan was gone. Sucked out of the account and secured in a legal fortress so high and so thick, Marcus would never see a single cent of it. But I wasn't done. I logged into our joint savings account, the one I primarily funded. It held our emergency fund about $60,000. I considered this an emergency. I transferred all of it, leaving exactly $1 behind. I logged into our joint checking account. I paid the mortgage and the utilities for the next month. I wasn't an idiot and transferred the remaining balance to my new private account. I liquidated the joint investment portfolio. Another $30,000. Gone. By 11:30 a.m., I had methodically drained every shared asset I had legal access to. I left them with joint accounts that were now just empty shells. I logged off, grabbed my purse, and told my manager I had a family emergency. It wasn't a lie. My next stop was the bank, the downtown branch where we kept our joint safe deposit box. I signed the ledger, and the attendant escorted me into the vault, the air cold and still. She used her key. I used mine, and the long, thin metal box slid out. "I'll just be a few minutes," I said. She nodded and left, closing the heavy curtain behind her. I opened the lid. Marcus hadn't been in here in years. He wasn't interested in sentimental things. I went straight for the velvet bag in the back, my mother's diamond earrings, my grandmother's pearls, my own birth certificate, my passport, my social security card. I took it all. I left his things, his father's signet ring, his stack of savings bonds from childhood. As I was repacking the box, my fingers brushed against a thick manila envelope I didn't recognize, tucked underneath my passport. It was from this bank, the Loan Origination Department. My heart went cold. I slid out the contents. It was a completed application and a signed agreement for a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, for $150,000, taken out against our apartment, an apartment that I had put the down payment on. I scanned the pages, my blood roaring in my ears. The loan had been finalized 6 weeks ago. The money had already been dispersed. I flipped to the final page, the signature page. There was Marcus's familiar, arrogant signature, and right next to it was mine. Only, I had never seen this document before in my life. He hadn't even tried to make it look real. The E in Alara was looped just like his M in Marcus. It was a lazy, obvious, desperate forgery. He had borrowed $150,000 against our home, without my knowledge, and signed my name as if I were just an afterthought. I stood there in the silent vault, the cold steel against my hands, and I realized the game had just fundamentally changed. Kincaid had him on civil fraud and malpractice. This was a crime. This was bank fraud. This was a felony. I carefully folded the forged documents and slipped them into my purse, along with my mother's diamonds. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. This was a prosecution. The night before the dinner, the air in our apartment was thick with unspoken things. Marcus came home in a fantastic mood, humming, for the first time in months. He was practically gliding. He thought he was on the home stretch. He thought his unstable wife was about to perform the final act of her self-destruction. He found me in the office, my laptop open. "Practicing the big speech?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe, a smug, supportive smile plastered on his face. "Just going over the finer points," I said, not looking up. He walked over and rubbed my shoulder. I forced myself to sit still. "Don't overthink it, Alara. Just speak from the heart." He chuckled, as if we were sharing a private joke. "Tell everyone exactly how you've been feeling, how you know you got a little confused. It's the most healing thing you can do." "From the heart," I said, looking up at him with a small, submissive smile. "You're right. I'll just be honest." "That's my girl," he said, kissing the top of my head. "It's going to be a wonderful night, a real new beginning for us." He went to the living room to watch TV. Oblivious. I turned back to my laptop. I wasn't writing a speech. I was finalizing a PowerPoint presentation. Later, after the sound of his light snoring filled the apartment, I started my real work. I took the small encrypted USB drive I'd been carrying everywhere and plugged it in. I created a new folder, The Full Truth. I meticulously dragged and dropped the files. The audio clips of him and Evelyn laughing at me, the vacation plans, the audio from my final therapy session, where she advised me to let go. I added the PDF scans of my notes on E, highlighting the phrases paranoid and emotionally unstable. I added the color-coded spreadsheet showing his business trips matching her wellness retreats. I added the complete 5-year statement from Innovate Horizons LLC, showing the hundreds of thousands he'd stolen. And last, I added the high-resolution scan of the HELOC application, with my forged signature looking laughably clumsy next to my real one. I ejected the drive and slipped it into my purse. Then I went to the printer. I had 10 black, professional-grade report binders stacked on the floor. I began printing. 10 complete copies of the financial fraud, the ethical violations, the wire transfers, and the forgery. I collated every page. This wasn't an act of revenge. It was a project delivery. I was a senior project manager, and this was the most important project of my life. I packed the 10 dossiers neatly into a file box, the kind I'd carry into any boardroom. At 2 a.m., I sat on the kitchen floor and texted Maya. The package is finalized. Is the pickup crew confirmed for tomorrow? My phone buzzed a minute later. 7 p.m. sharp. They have the side entrance key. They'll be in and out in under an hour. They are insured, and they have instructions to take everything with your name on the title. You're a brave woman. Alara, this isn't brave, I texted back. It's just balancing the books. I stood up and walked to my closet. I pushed past the gray suits and sensible blouses I wore to work. I pushed past the clothes of the woman I had been. In the very back, preserved in a garment bag, was the dress I'd bought for our 10th anniversary, a dinner he'd forgotten about. I unzipped the bag. It was a masterpiece of black silk. It was sleek, severe, and absolutely magnificent. It wasn't the dress of a victim. It wasn't the dress of a grieving widow or an unstable wife. It was the dress of a woman who was about to burn everything to the ground. I hung it on the closet door, letting it catch the moonlight. Tomorrow. They wanted a show. I was going to give them one. The private room at Trulux was exactly what I expected. Dark wood, low lighting, and the heavy scent of expensive steak and old money. About 20 people were there, the entire family. Marcus's mother, Alice, his brothers, his cousins, and their spouses, even the family lawyer, looking uncomfortable. This was the inner circle, the people who had watched me be exiled to the back pew. Marcus was in his element. He was holding court, a glass of bourbon in his hand, the very picture of the grieving nephew pulling himself together. He was magnanimous. He was charming. And then he played his final card. He walked to the door of the private room, just as the servers were bringing coffee, and he opened it. Sorry she's late, everyone. The traffic was terrible. Dr. Evelyn Reed walked in. She was wearing a tasteful navy blue dress, her blonde bob perfect. She looked exactly like a supportive, professional partner. Everyone, Marcus announced, beaming, his arm sliding around her waist. I want you to meet Dr. Evelyn Reed. She has been my rock through this, my special spiritual support. I insisted she join us. He led her to the head of the table, to the empty seat right next to his. My seat. I watched his mother, Alice. Her eyes narrowed. She looked at me, her face tight with confusion, but she said nothing. The seed I'd planted was there, but she was still loyal to her son. Evelyn sat down, nodding politely to the table. They were a team. After the dessert plates were cleared, Marcus stood. He tapped his spoon lightly against his water glass. The room fell silent. Thank you all for being here, he said, his voice smooth and full of fake emotion. It means the world to our family to honor Uncle David. He then turned, a wide, condescending smile spreading across his face, and looked right at me. My wife, Alara, has a few words she'd like to share, to honor David, and to clarify a few things. Alara. He smirked. He actually smirked at his brother. He thought he was handing me the shovel to dig my own grave. I stood up. The black silk dress moved with me, silent and heavy. I picked up my clutch and the single file box I'd brought. I walked to the small lectern at the front of the room, the one with the built-in projector screen. Thank you, Marcus, I said. My voice was calm and clear. It didn't shake. I plugged my USB drive into the laptop on the lectern. You are right. I do want to clarify a few things. I hit the power button. The screen hummed to life, bright and white, illuminating the dark room. And then the first slide appeared, in big, black block letters. 5 years of lies. The financial and ethical fraud of Marcus Davis and Dr. Evelyn Reed. You could have heard a pin drop. Marcus's smile didn't just fade, it shattered. Ilara, what is this? He stammered, starting to get up. This isn't funny. Turn that off. It's not a joke, I said. It's a presentation. I hit play. I had edited the video all night. It was only 4 minutes long. It started with the bank statements from Innovate Horizons LLC, showing the monthly transfers, $5,000. month after month. Then, the side-by-side comparison his Chicago seminar dates next to her Chicago Wellness Retreat blog post, his Miami conference next to her Miami panel. Then, the audio. The room went dead silent as they heard Evelyn's voice. "She's suffocating. I mean, the way she scrutinizes." And Marcus's reply, "She almost bought it. She thinks she's the problem." And the final clip, the plan. "Will use your notes emotionally unstable. Paranoid. Volatile to argue she's mentally unfit. Take the lion's share." Marcus lunged, he bellowed, "Turn it off," and scrambled, knocking his chair over as he charged the lectern. He never made it. Maya, who had been sitting quietly at the back table, stood up like a linebacker and put one hand flat in his chest, stopping him cold. "You need to sit down, Marcus." As the audio played on, I spoke over it, my voice like ice. "While you listen to the rest of their plan, my friend will be distributing the detailed reports." Maya walked from table to table, handing out the 10 black dossiers. She placed the first one directly in front of Alice, Marcus's mother. She gave one to his brother. She gave one to the family lawyer, who was staring at the screen, his face pale with professional horror. I turned my gaze to the head table. "Dr. Reed," I said, my voice sharp. Evelyn was frozen, her face chalk white. "A formal complaint, including the complete audio of my last session, your shared notes, and proof of your relationship with my husband, was filed with the Texas Medical Board at 9 a.m. this morning." She made a small, choking sound. She looked at Marcus, who was still being held back by Maya. He wouldn't look at her. Evelyn stood up so fast she knocked her wine glass over. Red wine bled across the white tablecloth. She grabbed her purse and she ran. She didn't walk. She ran out of the room. The video ended, and I clicked to the final slide, the high-resolution scan of the HELOC forgery. "And as for you, Marcus," I said, turning to him. He was breathing hard, defeated. "Ilara, don't, please." "The evidence of your felony bank fraud and forgery was delivered to the district attorney's office this afternoon. And that $2 million in stock you were waiting for, I moved it to an irrevocable trust yesterday. You will never, ever see it." I walked over to the head table, right up to him. I twisted my wedding ring off my finger, the 3-carat diamond he'd used my money to buy. I didn't place it on the table. I threw it at him. It hit his chest and clattered onto his dessert plate. "The moving company is at our apartment. Right now." I looked around at his stunned, silent family, all of them holding the evidence of his crimes in their hands. "This wasn't a speech," I said. "This is an announcement. I'm done." I picked up my clutch. I nodded at Maya. I turned around, and I walked out of that room, leaving him standing in the ruins of his life, with the projector screen still glowing behind him. Thank you for listening to my story. Please drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you are listening from. I'd love to connect and share our thoughts. Make sure you subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button so more people can hear this story.